Fabius Bile may be the last true follower of the Imperial Truth, not because he is secretly loyal to the Emperor. He clearly is not. And he has no interest in restoring the Imperium or returning humanity to the age of the Great Crusade. My argument is that Fabius still believes in a future remarkably close to the one the Emperor originally wanted. A secular humanity ruling the galaxy through science, reason, controlled evolution, free from its dependence on gods. While the Imperium worships the Emperor and has abandoned almost everything the Imperial Truth represented, Fabius continues to deny the gods, treat the warp as a phenomena rather than a divine authority, and use science to shape humanity's future. He is not following the Emperor's exact plan, but he may still be following the logic behind it. Fabius was born on Terra and became one of the earliest recruits for the Legionis Astartes. His aptitude for medicine and ginecraft led him to becoming one of the first apothecaries of the Emperor's children, and he studied under scientists connected to the development of the Astartes project. Because of this, Fabius understood what the Space Marines had actually been created to do. The Astartes were not supposed to rule humanity forever. They were weapons designed to conquer the galaxy, remove the threats surrounding mankind, and create the conditions in which the human species could prosper. Once that work was complete, the legions themselves would no longer be necessary. Fabius accepted that purpose in a way many other Astartes never did. He believed the Space Marines existed to serve humanity, not replace it. And this is one of the reasons he has so much contempt for what the legions became after the heresy. In Prime Genitor, he tells the Radiant, "You are not the disease, you are but the symptom. Mankind was on the cusp of greatness, Kasperos, and we yanked it away on the advice of a shared delusion." When the Radiant asks whether he regrets what they did, Fabius rejects the idea of regret, but he does not deny the failure. Instead, he points out that the traitor legions merely traded one form of servitude for another. They rejected the Emperor and claimed to have freed themselves, only to become slaves to the Chaos Gods. For Fabius, the heresy did not liberate the legions. It destroyed humanity's best chance of becoming something greater, while the Astartes spent the next 10,000 years fighting over the remains. The belief is important because it explains why Fabius eventually turned his attention away from the legions and back toward humanity itself. The Homo Novus, or new men, were not created as replacements for the Astartes. Fabius was not trying to build another legion or invent a better kind of space marine. He was trying to create an improved form of humanity. The new men are stronger, faster, and more adaptable than ordinary humans. But the crucial difference is that they can reproduce naturally. They can form families, build communities, develop their own culture, and continue evolving without relying on gene seed, implants, or apothecaries. They are not another army pretending to be a species. They are intended to become a genuine human population, capable of surviving the galaxy without the Astartes standing above them. This is the first major connection between Fabius and the Emperor. The Emperor did not believe humanity could simply be left alone and expected to survive. He used ginecraft, engineered warriors, state power, and conquest to force the species toward the future he believed was necessary. Fabius works on a smaller scale, but he begins from a similar belief. Humanity, in its current form, is not good enough. Evolution cannot be trusted to move quickly enough on its own, and someone with the necessary knowledge must take control of the process. The Emperor created the Primarchs and the Legions to shape history around humanity. Fabius attempts to reshape humanity itself. He uses cloning, surgery, controlled breeding, and genetic manipulation to produce a population better suited to the conditions of the galaxy. More importantly, he designed the new man to continue without him. Fabius seeded populations across multiple worlds, ensuring that the destruction of one laboratory or settlement would not end the project. Once released, the new man could reproduce, adapt, and develop in ways even he could not completely control. For a man as arrogant as Fabius, this is a significant choice. He wanted to guide their creation, but he did not want them to remain permanently dependent upon their creator. The Omega Redoubt took that idea even further. Fabius established a refuge for the new man inside an isolated section of the webway, where they could remain hidden from the wars of the wider galaxy and develop with less exposure to the direct influence of chaos. The Emperor's webway project was much larger and served different purposes, but both plans were responses to the same basic problem. Humanity could never reach its full potential while remaining completely exposed to the warp. The Emperor wanted humanity to use the webway so it would no longer depend so heavily on warp travel and the forces living within it. Fabius is a separate region of the webway as a protected space where his new species could reproduce and evolve beyond the immediate reach of the Chaos Gods. The scale was different, but the principle was very close. Separate humanity from the warp long enough for it to become something stronger. Fabius then tried to solve what he saw as another fundamental human weakness: faith. He wanted the new man to be free from superstition and attempted to suppress the instincts toward religious belief at the genetic level. From his perspective, the reasoning was obvious. If human emotion and belief could feed the powers of the warp, then a better form of humanity should not possess the same vulnerability. But he failed. Despite everything he taught them, his followers began to see Fabius as more than a scientist or a creator. They called him Pater Mutatis, the father of mutants. And what began as a title gradually developed into genuine worship. Fabius hated this because it contradicted everything he claimed to believe. He had seen demons, witnessed the power of the Chaos Gods, and even felt the direct attention of Slanesh. Yet he continued to insist that none of them were truly divine. To Fabius, they were vast psychic entities, created and sustained by emotion, not gods deserving worship or obedience. His followers did not care about that distinction. Their belief in Pater Mutatis began to create something within the warp, a presence connected to Fabius, mutation and transformation. It may be a separate entity, a reflection of Fabius, or the beginning of his own unwilling apotheosis. But it is clearly something God-adjacent, born from the worship surrounding him. And this is where the comparison with the Emperor becomes far more than a shared interest in science and genetic engineering. The Emperor attempted to remove religion from humanity and became the center of the largest human religion in history. Fabius attempted to remove faith from new men and began becoming a god to his own creations. Both men believed humanity should rise through knowledge and controlled evolution, yet neither managed to remove the human need to believe in something greater than themselves. The Emperor denied his own divinity and became the God Emperor. Fabius denied every god he encountered and became Pater Mutatis. The irony is even stronger because Fabius can recognize this pattern in other people more easily than he can recognize it in himself. When he encounters Belisarius' call and examines Alpha Primus, Fabius immediately sees that Cole is pursuing a goal similar to his own. He tells him, "Our goals are the same, though you do not admit it." Cole still serves the Imperium, while Fabius rejects it. But both use forbidden science and genetic engineering because they believe humanity cannot survive without being changed. Neither of them is willing to let tradition, religion, or the laws of their own faction. Fabius uses the same kind of reasoning on a smaller scale. He believes the future of the species can justify almost any suffering in the present. The difference is that the Emperor had primarchs, fleets, and resources of a growing galactic empire, while Fabius works through hidden laboratories, clones, stolen technology, and alliances that usually end in betrayal. He is not another emperor in terms of power, but he clearly inherited the Emperor's way of thinking. The similarities also appear in Fabius' obsession with creating superior leaders. He had cloned multiple primarchs and produced what appears to be a perfect clone of Fulgrim. He has also considered whether the new men may eventually require their own protectors or rulers, and he has repeatedly returned to the possibility of cloning the Emperor. This does not mean Fabius wants to rebuild the Empire, but it is shown that he still sees engineered individuals as tools capable of forcing history in a chosen direction. Create a new form of humanity, then create exceptional beings capable of protecting or guiding it. This is very close to the model used by the Emperor, even if Fabius would never admit it. There is also the problem that Fabius Bile is no longer a single person. He is called the Clone Lord not only because he clones primarchs and other subjects, but because he has created many clones of himself after his near death and stasis in M37. These clones share his memories, knowledge, and central goals, yet they are not always identical. Given enough time, they can develop their own priorities and follow the original project in different directions. This means Fabius' work can continue even when one version of him dies. His clones can preserve his knowledge, while the new men can continue developing without any Fabius controlling them directly. The project is no longer tied to one man. We see another part of this pattern when Fabius meets Belisarius' Cole. After examining Alpha Primus, Fabius immediately recognizes that he and Cole are working toward related goals. He tells him, "Our goals are the same, though you do not admit it." Fabius sees Cole as another scientist using forbidden knowledge, genetic engineering, and artificial evolution to preserve humanity. Cole may serve the Imperium, while Fabius rejects it, but both are willing to break the rules of their own factions because they believe the future of the species matters more than tradition. Fabius can recognize the similarities because he is still working from the same foundations. Science should guide humanity, and those capable of understanding that science have the right to use it. The final part of the parallel is sacrifice. For most of his life, Fabius believed the new men still needed him. He treated his own survival as essential because he saw himself as the only person capable of completing the project. In the end, however, he was forced to choose between preserving himself and giving the new man a chance to survive. After centuries spent denying the Chaos God, Fabius finally offered himself in exchange for the survival of his creations. His soul became the price of their escape. But the sacrifice worked. The new man survived. Populations remained scattered across the galaxy, and his clones continued to work after the Fabius who made them had condemned himself. The plan was not complete, and it did not succeed exactly as he had imagined, but its most important objective had been achieved. The Homo Novus no longer depended on one laboratory, one planet, or even one Fabius Bile. They had become our producing population, continuing without their creator. This creates one final difference between Fabius and the Emperor. The Emperor sacrificed himself to preserve the remains of his collapsing project, but the Imperium became permanently dependent on him. 10,000 years later, everything still revolves around the Golden Throne, and humanity cannot move forward because its entire civilization is built around preserving and worshipping its creator. Fabius sacrificed himself so that the new man could continue without him. They were not ordered to build an empire around his body or wait for his return. They were given the chance to disappear, reproduce, and decide their own future. The Emperor became the center of his civilization, while Fabius allowed his creations to leave him behind. None of this makes Fabius a loyalist, and it certainly does not excuse what he has done. He does not serve the Emperor, he does not care about preserving the Imperium, and the future he wants may be horrifying to ordinary humans. But loyalty to the Emperor and loyalty to the Imperial Truth are no longer the same thing. The Imperium worships the Emperor while abandoning his secular vision. Fabius rejects the Emperor while continuing to pursue a future built through science, controlled evolution, and freedom from the gods. He still believes the Astartes were created to make the galaxy safe for humanity, and failed when they placed themselves above the species they were supposed to serve. He created the new man as a new form of humanity, capable of reproducing and adapting and surviving without space marines. He hid them within the webway so they could develop away from the direct influence of chaos. He tried to remove fate from their nature, only to become the object of that fate himself. And when their survival demanded a final sacrifice, he surrendered his own soul, so the project could continue without him. Fabius Bile is not repeating the Emperor's exact plan, but he is trying to solve many of the same problems, using many of the same ideas. How do you guide human evolution? How do you protect humanity from chaos? How do you create a future where mankind rules the galaxy without depending on gods? The Imperium remembers the Emperor's words, but abandoned their meaning. Fabius Bile rejected the Emperor long ago, yet he may still be the last person following the promise behind the Imperial Truth.